In our Phoenix clan, a husband is someone you hatch yourself, but my memory isn't very good. I incubated 3 eggs in a row and forgot about them as soon as they hatched. It wasn't until over a millennium later that those eggs I'd hatched showed up together as adults. I am a little phoenix with a poor memory. When 3 eggs, oh no, when 3 divine lords showed up at my door, did I vaguely recall that I had actually hatched 3 eggs. The day they arrived, it was quite a spectacle. The heavenly crown prince Qihua is a white dragon in his true form. He arrived in a magnificent immortal carriage pulled by 7 white deer. Behind the carriage were 2 rows of armored guards riding steeds, along with several beautiful immortal maids trailing fluttering silks. It dazzled the eyes of all the little phoenixes looking up from the ground. Tanxi, if you really become the empress, don't forget about the rest of us. I nodded reservedly, though my heart couldn't help but leap with joy. I'm so happy. I'm going to be the empress. I am a phoenix without parents. The dragon egg I found actually hatched into the heavenly crown prince Qihua. When the Ministry of Rites came in person to deliver the message, the entire clan was left speechless. Now that Qihua has come himself, I assume it is to follow the customs of the Phoenix clan and come to marry the phoenix that hatched him. The immortal gate opened. A white figure slowly walked out. He wore wide white robes with handsome brows and fine eyes. His hair was bound with a precious jade crown. Dark hair and falling petals rested upon his shoulders. Behind him, an immortal maid held a black ink and cyan sky umbrella over him. Amidst the falling blossoms stood Qihua. My heart skipped a beat. I stepped forward with a smile. Prince Qihua. His clear, resonant voice sounded like pearls falling onto jade. A millennium ago, you were the one who hatched me. Is that true? My cheeks burned hot, and I even stuttered when I spoke. That is true. You were so small back then. Nothing like how you appear now. Your Highness, are you aware of my Phoenix clan's customs? Is this the reason for your visit? Please, say yes. Say that you've come to marry me. The shadow of the inkwash umbrella fell across his face. Only a long silence followed. Whispers began to ripple through the crowd. The looks from the young phoenixes shifted from envy to suspicion. Those were merely idle words from childhood. They are not to be taken seriously. We are not of the same kin. There is no need to dwell on the matter of marriage. An uproar broke out all around. I stared at him, stunned. But when you broke your shell, you said you would protect me for a lifetime. He lowered his gaze, as if displeased by my behavior. His fingertips twitched. A dragon scale glowing with white light flew into my hand. This scale can protect you should you encounter danger. My thanks for your favor in hatching me. That is all. That single light-hearted remark shattered all my expectations. The surrounding stares felt like needles pricking my skin. I bit my lip, holding back my tears. Suddenly, a mocking laugh echoed from the sky. I looked up. It was the ancient beast Dawu. Astride the beast sat Yan Shao, the young lord of the Qilin clan. So you're the one who goes around hatching eggs everywhere. The phoenixes of my clan were too terrified to speak. The Qilin clan holds great power. We cannot afford to offend them. Yan Shao's gaze swept across my face. His tone was contemptuous. Hey, are you called Tanxi or Tanbei? It is Tanxi. I took a deep breath, suppressing the bitterness in my heart. My lord, we have never met before. I do not know the purpose of your visit today. Never met. The old man at home forced me to come and marry you. He said 1,000 years ago, you hatched my Qilin egg. The words Qilin egg struck my mind like a thunderbolt. Blurred memories suddenly came flooding back. Between boulders amidst a sea of flames, magma flowing like tears. As a phoenix who fears fire, I held a black egg tightly in my arms. My skin scorched by tongues of flame, my eyes blinded by smoke. Yet I guarded it with my life, terrified the flames might touch the egg. I didn't know back then that Qilin are naturally immune to fire. My kin said I once went traveling and returned covered in wounds, afflicted by a strange illness and missing many memories. So that was my past hatching that Qilin egg. I shook my head. I'm sorry. I don't recall it. Yan Shao laughed even more brazenly. Not recalling it is fine. What kind of creature are you, to even be worthy of discussing marriage with me? The malicious words pierced my heart like ice daggers. I looked at Qihua standing to the side. He simply looked on with cold indifference, without even a furrow of his brow. The Phoenix clan is weak, residing in a remote corner. The 3 realms all know that we don't even have the right to protest. I clenched my fists. My lord, you jest. Tanxi is not worthy. I turned toward Qihua. Your Highness, rest assured, I will not be a burden. The customs of the Phoenix clan are not ironclad rules that must be followed. Qihua nodded faintly, then turned to board his immortal carriage and departed with his grand procession. Yan Xiao also rode off on Daowu as a gust of gale force wind swept past, and they vanished from sight. The gazes around me were full of pity. The elders of the clan sighed softly. That a phoenix's hatching is always blood and sweat. Yet the 2 eggs I hatched turned out to be heartless ingrates. I stood there in the same spot, my mind in complete turmoil. Birds flew toward me one by one, transforming into women in feathered robes. Their expressions were pitying, yet filled with disdain. Are you Tanxi? Lord Qingluan entrusted me to deliver a message. In gratitude for Fairy Tanxi's grace in hatching him, he bestows 10,000 superior spirit stones and 100 stalks of Yaoshan Ganoderma. He hopes to sever this ill-fated connection. The Phoenix tribe's tradition of betrothal through incubation is a trivial custom he does not care to follow. She unfurled the brocade scroll. Her voice was soft, yet everyone in the Phoenix tribe heard it clearly. The 3rd egg was actually Lord Qingluan. Having hatched 3 eggs in a row, all 3 came to break off the engagement. I, Tanxi, have become the laughingstock of the Phoenix tribe, and a joke across the 3 realms. I looked up, forcing a smile at the tribe's people gathering around. It is fine, it doesn't matter. I'll just hatch another egg who is willing to be my husband. No one believed me, but they had no idea that it wouldn't be long before these 3 lords who broke off their engagements would be begging to be my one and only husband. News of the broken engagement spread like wildfire, reaching across the demon, spirit, and god realms. Even low-born birds like owls and sparrows dared to land on my roof and chatter away. Look, that is Tanxi, the phoenix who was dumped by 3 lords. How embarrassing. If I were her, I would have hidden away long ago. Where did these pests come from? Hump, hump. Phoenixes aren't anything so great anymore. Anyway, they giggled and flew off, leaving me standing on the roof feeling completely annoyed. Even Qing Yao, the old fox who wanders the 4 seas, was alarmed. He was the one who picked me up, and although he was rarely at Danxia Mountain, he was the only elder who truly cared for me. He leaned on his walnut wood staff, pounding it against the ground in my courtyard. Furious. Had I known this would happen, I should have sent you to Hangxi River sooner. With that one there, no one would dare ride roughshod over you. As long as you cultivate diligently, you will surely be able to defeat that heartless wretch. I have an old friend who lives at Hangxi River. He is the most powerful deity in all the heavens and earth. I can arrange for you to become his disciple. Are you bragging? But seeing Qing Yao's eyes brimming with tears, my heart softened. Very well, I just wonder if that deity would even take me in. That night, Qing Yao took me with him, leaving Dangxi Mountain on his iron gourd. We flew over mountains, rivers, and seas, arriving at Jianshun Mountain, deep within Hangxi River. In front of the snow-covered mountain gate, a young boy with a lantern stood waiting, with hair white as a crane, a cinnabar mark between his brows, exquisite features, and a detached expression. He looked as beautiful as someone from a painting. Your deity friend's gatekeeper is quite adorable. Qing Yao gave me a pat. You silly phoenix, this is Lord Fuguang. Hurry and address him as master. I stood there frozen on the spot. This young boy was actually Lord Fuguang. Fuguang raised his eyes to look at me, his small frame emanating an intense pressure, like wind and snow piercing the bone, chilling to the very heart. Crushed by that pressure, I broke into a cold sweat. Bowing my head, afraid to speak, Qing Yao stepped in to smooth things over. Our little phoenix is just a bit timid. Don't go scowling at her. Fuguang remained silent for a moment. Then a cold, icy voice sounded. Come in. Qing Yao left that very night, instructing me before he departed. Fuguang may be cold-natured, but he is immensely powerful. Cultivate hard, and with such a backer, you can walk sideways wherever you go. He also has a few other disciples. They are all the cream of the crop, and they will look after you. I took his word for it. Before dawn the next day, I stood before Lingshao Palace, waiting for my senior fellow apprentices. A chime like laughter drifted over. A girl in a soft green gown skipped in, her features bright and spirited. Hello, junior sister. Behind her, a white silhouette arrived on the wind and snow. He looked at me with pale, indifferent eyes. The moment our eyes met, I was struck as if by lightning. It was Qihua, the crown prince of the heavens, the cream of the crop that Qing Yao spoke of. The senior brother who was supposed to look after me was none other than Qihua, who had just called off our engagement. Before I could regain my composure, a languid voice rang out. So much for saying you wouldn't pester me. How else would you chase after me? You followed me all the way here. That little mongrel phoenix is quite persistent. It was Yan Xiao, the young master of the Qilin clan. He raised an eyebrow at me, his smile brimming with arrogance. I was trembling with rage, lifting my hand to strike him. A silver leaf whistled through the air, passing between me and Yan Xiao, and pinning itself deep into a pillar. A bloodstain instantly appeared on Yan Xiao's face. I recoiled in fear, realizing just then, the Qilin clan is known for holding grudges. If I had slapped him, it surely would have brought trouble upon my people. Fuguang had appeared in the hall at some point. The child's face was cold and severe. Yan Xiao, despite being able to dodge the leaf, dared not move. It was clear he stood in absolute awe of Fuguang. So, Qingyao hadn't lied to me. Fuguang was truly formidable. I dropped to my knees, knocking my head against the floor. A loud, resounding thud. Thank you, Master. Master is wise. Everyone in the hall was stunned. You certainly know how to seize the moment, Fuguang said coldly. Come here. I walked obediently to his front and knelt on the floor. He rested his fingertips on my forehead, a surge of heat flowing into my body, leaving it feeling warm and pleasant. He asked in a low voice. Qingyao said you lost your memory, and the cause cannot be found. When did it begin? I glanced at Qihua and said softly, it seems like the first time was after I hatched an egg. He pondered for a moment. As his spiritual power coursed through my body, those hazy memories actually began to return bit by bit. My memories returned to 600 years ago. Back then, I was still a minor, 300 years away from receiving a phoenix egg to hatch as my husband. Life on Tanxi Mountain was far too lonely. Qingyao came and went without a trace. I, a lone phoenix, spent 300 years rolling around, gulping down 300 years of wind. It was so incredibly boring that I made a decision against my ancestors, take an egg, and hatch a husband in advance. On the day of the Celestial Grand Assembly, I snuck into the Heavenly Palace. In an empty hall, I saw a dragon egg glowing with brilliant light. It was bigger than any egg in my clan, and more beautiful. Just as I touched the egg, a low, melancholic female voice came from behind me. You are a phoenix. I was shaking with fear. Please, immortal, spare me. I was foolish for a moment. The Phoenix clan would kill to protect their own eggs. Is that so? I nodded repeatedly. She touched the back of my neck. Swear an oath to protect this egg for all eternity, to love and cherish it, and never abandon it, or else suffer the penalty of 9 heavenly thunders. From this day forth for all eternity, I will love and protect him, cherish and treasure him, and never abandon him. Otherwise, I shall suffer the punishment of 9 divine lightning strikes. Overwhelmed by her aura, I closed my eyes and shouted the vow. A burning pain seared the back of my neck. She had left a mark upon me. Go on, take him away. I carried the dragon egg all the way back to the Kanglang Sea, where I incubated it for 100 years, until a little boy hatched from it. I named him Axu. Axu grew, day by day, becoming more handsome with each passing year, growing into a tall and upright young man. Yet, my heart grew increasingly restless. Small horns gradually sprouted on his forehead. He was clearly not a phoenix. Finally, one day, Axu pointed to his horns and said, "Say it again. What am I? A phoenix? You lied to me." His burning, steady gaze locked onto me. I could hide it no longer, and confess the whole truth about taking the egg, even revealing the mark on the back of my neck. If you want to go back, I won't stop you. He looked down at my fingertips covered in scars, the ones I'd gotten while picking Qilin fruits for him. After a long silence, I go back, and what about you? I go back to Tanxi Mountain. You're almost an adult now. It's time for you to be assigned a proper phoenix egg. His voice was soft, his eyes filled with a wintry chill. Once grown, you'll be assigned a new egg by the clan. And you'll forget me, won't you? Still mired in the sadness of parting. I hadn't heard his words clearly, but he suddenly smiled. Whatever you say I am, that is what I am. I am a phoenix, and your good friend for all time to come. During those days, Axu and I relied on each other in the Kanglang Sea. He accompanied me to watch the tides ebb and flow. I washed his clothes and cooked for him. A century of time, warm and peaceful. But the Heavenly Emperor finally found us. Axu was the crown prince of the Heavenly Realm, of the true dragon bloodline. How could he be allowed to stay in the humble Kanglang Sea with a mere phoenix? The Heavenly Emperor's soldiers surrounded the Kanglang Sea. Axu shielded me behind him and stood against the Heavenly Army. He looked back at me with gentle eyes. Tanxi, wait for me. I will return to collect you. I will wait for you. I believed him, but once he left, there was no further word from him. Later, I fell ill with a strange affliction and lost my memories. In a daze, I arrived at Dangshui Mountain and somehow ended up incubating a Qilin egg and a Qingluan egg. And Axu was actually Qihua. He returned to the heavenly realm, becoming the high and mighty crown prince, forgetting the century we spent together at Kanglang Sea, forgetting the little phoenix who guarded him for those 100 years. He even came to Dangxi Mountain in person talisman to call off our betrothal. Fuguang's spiritual power receded. I snapped back to reality. My eyes were already wet with tears, so it wasn't that I couldn't remember clearly. It was that I had lost the most important memory of all. So Qihua wasn't born cold and distant. He simply had forgotten me, forgotten the boy named Axu, forgotten everything about the Kanglang Sea. Life on the mountain was long and unbearable. Counting myself, there were 4 disciples in the sect: Qihua, Yanxiao, and our senior sister Yingshe in her pale green dress. Qihua spent most of his time in the heavenly realm and rarely visited the sect. When he did, he looked right through me. Occasionally, Yingshe was by his side, the two of them talking and laughing, so intimate that it made my eyes ache. Yanxiao was still as unruly as ever. Call me a mangy phoenix to my face, but he always protects me when I least expect it. For example, when the little immortals in the sect mocked me, he would drive them away without a second thought. When I hit a wall in my cultivation, he would complain with his mouth, but quietly leave behind secret manuals for me. Senior sister Yingshe has been exceptionally kind to me, teaching me how to cultivate, keeping me company, and gossiping with me about the 3 realms. She said that the reason God Fuguang takes the form of a child is because he exhausted his spiritual power 10,000 years ago to suppress a catastrophic omen. Qihua is the future heavenly emperor, focused solely on his cultivation, never concerned with affairs of the heart. Yanxiao is just a rude little monkey, gifted with natural talent, but hopelessly misbehaved. As I listened to her words, I knew in my heart that senior sister Yingshe loves Qihua. The way she looks at him is filled with joy and adoration. Jianchun Mountain was always covered in eternal snow, but ever since I arrived, the ice and snow have gradually melted, the flowers and trees have revived, and the sun shines bright every day. Only my heart remains frozen over, refusing to thaw. That day, I took some wine from the kitchen and sat on a tree branch to drink my sorrows away. I became hopelessly drunk and tumbled down, swaying unsteadily. The impact I expected never came. I had fallen into a warm embrace. With half-loose black hair and brows like distant mountains, it was Chua. I pressed against his chest and murmured, "Axu, I miss you so much." "Who is Axu?" "It is you. Don't be the emperor anymore. Can't we just go back to Kanglang Sea? There are people here who love and protect me. There is a monkey who rides a pig. There is a colorful parrot. And there is you, Axu, holding an umbrella." But my head was splitting with pain as I clutched him and fell into a deep sleep. I didn't see the flash of confusion in his eyes, as if old memories were churning up, before quickly returning to calm. Waking up from a hangover the next day, Sister Yingxi looked at me with a smile. "I need to take back what I said yesterday." She called toward the hall. "Brother Yanhua, Tanxi is awake." Yuanhua walked out. "Aunt, stop messing around." "Aunt, I forgot to tell you. I am the divine Lord Yingshe, Yuanhua's own aunt." My feathers were scared right off me. To think that in front of his future aunt, I had been chasing her nephew relentlessly, had gotten dead drunk, and hugged him while calling out someone else's name. How embarrassing. Upon learning that Yingshe was Yuanhua's aunt, I actually plucked up my courage. She treats me extremely well, and would never make things difficult for me. Perhaps she could even help me jog Yuanhua's memory. So, during the days Yuanhua visited Jianshan Mountain, I did everything I could to get his attention, trying to make him remember. "Brother Yuanhua, I picked some qilin fruit. Have a taste, it used to be your favorite." I found a piece of jade in the storehouse, and after pulling several all-nighters, carved out a set of chess pieces. I presented them to him like a treasure. "Brother Yanhua, I made these chess pieces for you. See if you like them." He stared at the cuts all over my hands. "You don't need to do these things." His voice was slightly cold. I didn't listen and shoved the chess pieces into his arms, then turned and ran. I heard a soft sigh behind me, one that seemed both helpless and tender. The autumn air was crisp and clear. I brewed tea under the eaves, steeping the little leaf bitter tea he loved best, and brought it to him. He picked up the teacup. His fingertips paused slightly. "I do not care for this. Senior brother, you are the crown prince of the heavens. What rare treasures have you not seen? Tanxi has nothing to offer but a heart full of sincerity." "Nonsense." A faint pink hue instantly appeared on his ears. His eyes overlapped with those of young Axu from the Kanglang Sea. I was momentarily dazed. Yet, seemingly displeased by my gaze, he flicked his sleeves and left. I asked Master Fuguang, "What exactly happened to Yuanhua's memories?" The master said, "Yuanhua's consciousness seems normal. Perhaps he was placed under a spell, deliberately sealing away that period of memory." I went to ask Yuanhua, "What is actually going on with your memories? Those 100 years at the Kanglang Sea, do you really not remember them at all?" The immortal physician has already restored my memories within my consciousness. There is no such 100 years of companionship as you claim. Unable to argue my case, I felt like a deflated balloon. His gaze, in a place I could not see, was as cold as ice. Yet, I did not know. He hadn't forgotten, but was being forced by the heavenly emperor using the common people as leverage to deliberately suppress his memories. memories. He feared that if he looked back, he would abandon the three realms and follow me back to the Kanglang Sea. 100 years of time passed in the blink of an eye. My cultivation had improved significantly, and Yuanhua came to Jianchun Mountain more and more often. We remained distant, yet grew closer in subtle ways. He would, when I went astray during cultivation, promptly channel spiritual energy to me. When I was being bullied by Yan Xiao, he would silently help me out of the situation. When I stared blankly in the direction of the Kanglang Sea, he would quietly stand by my side, without saying a word. I thought life would continue on like this, and that one day, he will remember everything. But a prophecy from the Taoist of heavenly secrets shattered all the peace. The Taoist was divining the secrets of the heavens in the star-gazing tower. Mars moved erratically, hinting at the return of the calamity from 10,000 years ago. As soon as these words were spoken, the three realms were shaken. The human world fell into chaos. A tyrant ruled. The demon and spirit realms became turbulent, and the people suffered miserably. Master Fuguang gathered the four of us disciples. The great calamity of 10,000 years ago was a hidden secret of the three realms. At that time, the six realms were in total upheaval. The immortal realm suffered heavy losses, and the Phoenix clan began its decline from that moment on. No longer the most noble divine birds of the heavenly realm. No one knew who the mastermind behind the calamity truly was, only that it was a baleful star capable of upending the three realms. Yan Xiao drew the Fenchen sword from his side, raising an eyebrow at Master Fuguang. Why take this bunch of dead weight with us? Fuguang looked at him coldly, raising his hand to summon the immortal binding rope, tying him along with his sword onto the horse's back. Either you go, or you stay bound on Jianchun Mountain for 100 years. Old monster Fuguang, just you wait. The four of us left the mountain just like that, leaving Tanxi stream, traveling eastward. Everywhere we looked, the people were suffering. Lesser demons and monsters could be seen everywhere, but none were a match for us. To Yuanhua, Yan Xiao, and Ying Shui, they were merely trifles to be dealt with effortlessly, but to me, it was a rare opportunity to gain experience. Most of the time, Yuanhua would hold one end of the binding rope, and along with Ying Shui, watch from the sidelines, watching me draw my bow and string, defeating the minor demons with the blade 3,000 worries that Master forged for me. Ying Shui would cheer me on, while Yan Xiao would grumble from the side. Well done, Tanxi. Is such a minor trick even worth showing off? Yuanhua would always raise his hand, a beam of white light sealing Yan Xiao's lips, preventing him from speaking another word. Upon arriving in Lai County, we encountered a tricky demon for the first time. The demon looked seductive, appearing like a young man, yet countless vines sprouted from beneath his feet, instantly pinning the three of us in place. The vines were like ghosts, impossible to burn away or clear out, endlessly regenerating. Yuanhua twisted his fingers to form a seal, several translucent talismans striking at the vines, but they had no effect. Jingxi was bound by the vines, fingertips struggling, able only to pluck a few powerless notes. Look down, divine lords. The demon laughed, his voice eerie. I looked down, only to see the severed vines writhing like leeches, piercing through our skin, burrowing into our flesh. The pain was piercing. I channeled my magic, trying to force the vines out, but the more I pushed my power, the deeper the vines burrowed. The demon took a deep breath, a look of intoxication on his face. Such fragrant phoenix blood. I haven't encountered such pure phoenix blood in 10,000 years. My blood was draining rapidly, and everything went black before my eyes. Seeing this, fury churned in Yuanhua's eyes. At that moment, Yan Xiao broke through the silent spell. Yanhua. Yuanhua released his hand, and the immortal binding rope fell away. Yan Xiao rolled his shoulders, the corners of his mouth curling into a smile. Let me show you all that I haven't wasted my time wandering the demon and spirit realms. Not for a single day. A towering fire erupted from behind him, the flames condensing into a giant burning sword. The legendary Fenchen sword. Powerful sword intent pierced through the air, striking the demon from every direction, leaving behind searing, unquenchable wounds on its body. The demon let out a piercing shriek of agony. Yuanhua took the opportunity to conjure the ancient divine sword, Quesh. An icy blue glow shot straight into the clouds, shimmering in tandem with the flames of the Fenchen sword. Thunder rumbled, black clouds eclipsed the sun, and a gale began to howl. The demon let out a wicked, gravelly laugh. Summoning wind and lightning with a sword. You truly are the true dragon prince of the celestial realm. Yan Xiao rolled his eyes. Yuanhua, can't you stop trying to steal the spotlight? Yuanhua offered a faint smile, his voice crisp and cold. Brilliant light erupted. I was forced to close my eyes against the glare. When I opened them again, the demon lay on the ground, breathless and still. After this battle, Yan Xiao seemed to find it all quite amusing. Even without the immortal binding rope, he was willing to continue on with us, but he was always pestering me. Between me and Yuanhua, who is more powerful? Answer honestly. Don't just favor him because you're infatuated with me. I rolled my eyes. Sisters Beixing zither and my 3,000 worries are the coolest. Little Tanxi has the best taste. Yingxi rushed over to hug me, laughing happily. Yuanhua sat to the side, eyes closed in meditation, though a small smile tugged at the corner of his lips. The journey was loud and rowdy. As we headed east toward the endless abyss, I'd heard that adorable demonic beasts haunted the area near the abyss. It was the most treacherous place in the 3 realms. Below the 1,000-foot cliffs raged the scorching red lotus karma fire. Immortal arts and demon spells alike would fail there, a place of no return. While we rested at an inn, a storyteller downstairs caught my attention. Do you know, my esteemed guests, the chaos of the Yinghua star 10 millennia ago? Everyone believes there was only one star of disaster, but in truth they were 2 joined as one, capable of turning the world and heaven upside down. 1,000,000 celestial soldiers were deployed, yet they only managed to kill one, though they hoped to prevent the catastrophe. Who could have known that fate is immutable? In the end, the 3 realms were thrown into chaos. He paused for a moment. Beauty is a dangerous distraction. A hero saving a beauty led to a great calamity. The audience below let out a chorus of jeers. I, however, stood frozen in place. Beauty is a dangerous distraction. Who could they be talking about? Upon hearing this, Qihua furrowed his brows ever so slightly. Yingxi's eyes flickered. Yan Xiao sneered. Fabrications and nonsense. Do they really take us for fools? But looking at Qihua's expression, I felt a hidden sense of unease. I couldn't help but feel that the storyteller's words were not entirely groundless. Cold gusts of wind whipped around the endless abyss. Under the 1,000-foot cliff, the lotus karmic fire surged, dyeing half the sky in red. The 4 of us lay in ambush from a distance, watching that round creature-like form at the edge of the cliff. It was none other than the legendary Beauty Lantern. Senior Sister Yingxi's expression was grave. The Beauty Lantern can conjure illusions, drawing people into their own downfall. Once you fall into it, your soul will be consumed, becoming its nourishment. Before she had finished speaking, the ground suddenly shook. The soft orb atop the Beauty Lantern emitted a gentle orange glow. That light seemed to possess a magical power. I felt everything go black, and I was pulled into an illusion. Within the illusion, I was suddenly at the shores of the Kanglang Sea. The young Akshu stood beside me, gazing out at the rolling white-capped waves, his expression distant and sorrowful. Akshu. My eyes grew hot. I called out to him. He turned back, his eyes radiant, taking my hand, his voice gentle. You always ask me, if you hadn't hatched me, if we hadn't spent a century together, would I still love you? I nodded, full of anticipation. I used to say the question had no meaning. He smiled, his handsome brows softening in the sunset. Now I tell you, I would, Tanxi, such a lovely little phoenix. No matter when, I would always love you. A warmth surged through my heart. Just as I was about to speak, his gaze slowly darkened. Do not be afraid. Do not linger. Keep moving forward. He reached out and grasped the horizon, pulling it with force. Space twisted. Seawater rushed back in, and the sunset was swallowed by darkness. I jerked my eyes open, breaking out in a cold sweat. This was no Kangling Sea. I was being held high by the beauty lamp's tentacles, suspended over the endless abyss. Beneath my feet lay the bottomless void. Qihua, Yanxiao, and Yingxie were also caught, still trapped in their illusions. Qihua was closest to me, barely an arm's length away. His brows were furrowed tightly, as if having some nightmare. I raised my hand and slapped him with all my might. His lashes fluttered, and he opened his eyes. Seeing me, his brows knitted even tighter. His voice was colder than ice, demanding of me, who exactly are you looking at through me? The beauty lamp let out a shriek. The earth shook. Its tentacle shoved me further toward the abyss, as if it would drop me at any moment. I had no time to explain, and slapped Qihua again with my other hand. Only after there was a red mark on each of his cheeks did his expression gradually clear. Once sober, Qihua's expression turned fierce. The Quexi sword rang as it left its sheath, pointing straight at the soft bulb atop the beauty lantern. Yet immortal arts are suppressed at the edge of the endless abyss, and the Quexi sword trembled slightly. Its power greatly diminished. The beauty lantern seemed to sense this, revealing hundreds of unconscious mortals beneath its belly. Their eyes were tightly shut, with smiles on their faces, clearly still alive. It shook me with its tentacles, its meaning unmistakable. Either Qihua slays it, saving the hundreds of mortals, while I fall into the endless abyss, or Chua saves me, and it lets the mortals' bodies go. The howling wind made me dizzy and faint. I wanted to tell him I wouldn't blame him for choosing the mortals, but the words wouldn't come out. I just stared at him blankly. A flash of pain crossed his face. He closed his eyes, and when he opened them again, his gaze held only resolve. The Quexi sword struck with precision, driving deep into the beauty lantern's crown. The tentacles released me, and I plummeted into the endless abyss. In the moment of my descent, as I watched his agonized face, I thought to myself that he had made the right choice. He is the crown prince of the heavens, the future heavenly emperor, for whom the common people come first. I was always just a person of no consequence. It's just, I'm so tired. Akshu, this time, I really am going to let you go. I thought I would fall into the red lotus karma fire and have my soul scattered. But during the fall, a burst of fire rushed toward me, plucking me from the karmic flames. It was Yan Xiao holding me in the cloud realm of Z, his expression filled with anxiety. You beautiful phoenix, why didn't you know how to get out of the way? I lay in his arms, feeling completely drained, yet suddenly felt a surge of warmth within. My cultivation had subtly advanced. The karmic lotus flames are the true source of a phoenix's power. Not only did they not harm me, but they actually helped refine my veins. That brat Qihua looked like he was about to jump into the endless abyss, until Aunt Yingshe dragged him back to the heavenly palace for confinement. I figured since you're a phoenix, you'd be fine, so I came to fish you out. It is a good thing I got there in time to save you. He paused and said awkwardly, I've saved you now. The debt of you hatching me is settled between us. From now on, stop obsessing over making me your husband. Everything erupted at that moment. I tackled him to the ground and began pummeling his handsome face. First, I never had an obsession with you. I don't even like you. Second, you saved me, and I will repay that debt. But I only hatched you because I lost my own, and I mistook you for Ashu. I never once intended to have you as my husband. Yan Xiao was stunned by my blows, staring blankly at me. Tears streamed down my cheeks, and at that very moment, all my missing memories came flooding back. Everything I had forgotten, everything I had overlooked, all became crystal clear. I remembered Ashu, wounded by demons, teetering on the brink of death, reverting to his true dragon form. I fought with everything I had to save him, but I was powerless. I could only kneel outside the heavenly courts, begging the emperor to save him. The emperor had intended to cast me into the execution terrace, but upon seeing the mark on the back of my neck, suddenly changed his attitude and let me go. But he took away the memories of the last 100 years from me and Yuanhua. Once he comes of age, I will tell him of your kindness. I thought that was the heavenly emperor's mercy, not knowing it was his scheme all along. With my memories lost, I returned to the Kanglang Sea in a daze, only to be struck by the 9 heavenly thunders. That was the vow I had made years ago. If I were to abandon the dragon egg, I would be punished by the heavenly thunder. But I never abandoned Aksu. It was the heavenly emperor who tore us apart. Yet the heavenly thunder fell upon me nonetheless. After the 9 strikes of thunder, I miraculously survived and wandered aimlessly through the flame mountain, where I found a an egg. Back then, my mind was clouded. I only felt that this egg was very much like Akshu's dragon egg, so I protected it with my life, dodging the flames, until I hatched it. It wasn't until the Chilling clan found me that I realized it wasn't Akshu. Later, I returned to Dangshu Mountain and saw the clan casting a green egg aside into the woods. The egg looked strange and was disliked by all the phoenixes. I couldn't bear it, so I picked it up and secretly hatched it. That was the green phoenix Chenyu. Chenyu was born with divine power, and even while inside the shell, he heard all the phoenixes scorn. That is why he hates the Phoenix clan, and hates me too. He always said that I raised him, only because of the Phoenix clan's rules. That if you hatch an egg, you must be betrothed. If not for those rules, I would never have fancied him. My memory was poor back then, and I couldn't come up with a rebuttal. I could only watch him leave in anger after growing into a youth. He became the renowned green phoenix deity of the 3 realms. Later on, he sent people to Dangshu Mountain to break off the engagement. All these memories are incredibly clear now. I finally understand. My memory isn't actually poor. My memories were stolen by the heavenly emperor. My mind was shattered by the divine lightning. Yan Xiao watches me, weep, looking flustered. He raises his hand to wipe away my tears, but then pulls it back. You said you only hatched me because you mistook me for Yuanhua. Otherwise, did you think I'd actually take a liking to you? A creature who calls me a motley phoenix. Yan Xiao falls silent for a long time, then suddenly stands to fetch the magical mirror of heaven and earth. Place your palm print on it. I want to see how you protected me. I couldn't refuse him, and pressed my palm against the mirror. Images surfaced within the glass. In the flaming mountains, I cradled the Qilin egg burned by tongues of fire. Yet I desperately guarded the egg, not letting it suffer the slightest harm. To find a treasure that could shield shield the egg from the heat. I nearly fell off a cliff. I held the egg in the cave, sleepless for days and nights, softly humming the nursery rhymes of the Phoenix clan. In the vision, my gaze was filled with affection. My movements were tender. As Yan Xiao watched, his eyes turned red. From that day on, Yan Xiao changed. He spent every day holding the mirror, looking at it over and over. He even used his fingers to zoom in, studying the expression on my face in detail. He stopped calling me a motley phoenix, and instead protected me at every turn. He wore robes of magnificent silk, appeared before me with a golden crown and jade belt, with his brow relaxed and eyes full of expectation, looking just like a peacock fanning its tail. Watching him like this, I couldn't help but ask, "The celestial gathering is about to begin. Are you going to attend?" His attendant was about to speak, but Yan Xiao covered his mouth. "This young master wears whatever he pleases." I sighed and said tactfully, "Yan Xiao, back then, I really only thought of you as Qihua. You're just saying that to be difficult. I don't believe you." He stared at me intently. After a long moment, he suddenly smiled. As arrogant as ever, I find that communicating with Yan Xiao is truly harder than talking to a brick wall. His worldview is far too impenetrable. He is convinced that I have feelings for him, and no matter how I explain it, it is useless. I tell him I don't like him, and he flashes the universe mirror at me. "You love me to death." I tell him to look at my past memories, to verify that what I say is true. He stiffens his neck. Peeking at memories invites divine retribution. I won't look. I would never be with someone who called me a mangy phoenix. He actually makes his servants call him a mangy Qilin. He was chased and beaten by his father for 300 miles. That day, I sat on the roof of Weiru Hall applying medicine for him. He had been beaten by his father. I said helplessly, "You Qilins only have scales. You have no fur, so why be a mangy Qilin?" He raised an eyebrow and instantly shifted into his true form, a black and gold Qilin over 7 feet tall. His scales shimmered with a golden glow, and he had golden tufts of fur on his head, back, and tail. He looked magnificent. He lowered his head and nuzzled against my head affectionately. "You're actually quite handsome." The Qilin's ears twitched, as if he were shy. Life in Yunjingze was peaceful and pleasant. I gradually forgot those troubles, but a few words from Yan Li cast me back into hell. That day, I was outside the hall and accidentally heard Yan Xiao's father, Qilin sovereign Yan Li, scolding him. "You're playing the fool to keep that cute little phoenix amused. I don't care, but you must not forget our grand ambition." That Phoenix's parents were the disastrous omens of Mars 10,000 years ago. With this latest shifting of the stars, only then can we challenge the heavens and earth and conquer the 3 realms. Yan Xiao's voice rang out, low and firm. "I have my own plans." My world collapsed in an instant. Everything was just a ruse. My parents were the legendary disasters, and I was the daughter of these disasters. They approached me, not out of affection, but only to exploit my snow pulse, to achieve their ambitions. I revealed my true form, fleeing Yunjingzi like a startled bird. My wings failed, and I plummeted from the sky. In the moment of my fall, I fell into a phantasmagorical dream. In the dream, my parents were the rulers of the Phoenix clan, Phoenix Emperor Tanxuan and Phoenix Empress Zhang Yi. They loved each other deeply and governed the Phoenix clan with perfect order. Back then, the Phoenix clan was the most noble of the 3 realms, held in great reverence, until an omen appeared in the sky, and the Taoist seer predicted the birth of a disaster. One of them was the Phoenix Empress, Zhang Yi. The heavenly emperor led 1,000,000 celestial soldiers on a personal crusade, intending to execute my mother, to root out the threat. My father stood before my mother, his eyes burning red. "My empress could never be a bringer of disaster. Your Majesty, you and I are disciples of the ancestor Honggun. We grew up together. You know Zhang Yi's nature well. If she were truly a disaster, she would sooner take her own life than ever harm the world. Junior brother, the will of heaven cannot be defied. If 2 disasters become one, the 3 realms will surely descend into chaos. I cannot fail to act for the sake of the world. If the Phoenix Empress causes harm, by divine law, you and every soul of the Phoenix clan shall be implicated." Before the words had even faded, the people of the Phoenix clan knelt upon the ground, weeping and wailing. "Heavenly Emperor, have mercy. Hand over the disaster star." They were the people protected by my parents. Yet, in their time of peril, they chose betrayal. Mother looked upon the wailing crowd, her eyes stained with a scarlet hue, stepping backward 1 pace after another. Father looked upon all that was happening and laughed aloud. His laughter was filled with despair. Heaven and earth are heartless, treating us like sacrificial dogs. What else is there for me to cling to? The long sword in his hand roared with energy. The Star Lord of Fate suddenly shouted, "No. The Phoenix Emperor's destiny is changing." It was too late. Father and mother became demons together that day. The other disaster star was none other than Father, who had been pushed to his breaking point. The stars Tanxi and Yinhuo merged into one. The winds and clouds shifted colors, and the 6 realms fell into chaos. The Yinhuo uprising of 10,000 years ago erupted then. Seeing this, the heavenly emperor ordered the extermination of the disaster stars. 1,000,000 heavenly soldiers descended, besieging my parents. To protect mother, Father was pierced through the chest by the heavenly emperor's spear, his soul dissipating into nothingness. Mother looked at Father's lifeless body, the final shred of clarity flashing in her eyes. Gritting her teeth, she threw herself onto the tip of a divine lord's sword, taking her own life. That divine lord was none other than Master Fuguang. The vision turns back in time. Before Mother took her own life, she had found Master Fuguang with tear-filled eyes. "Junior brother, you cannot save us. I only beg you to take Tanxi away. Let her grow up as an ordinary little phoenix and never learn of these things. If she finds out later and wishes for revenge, let her handle it herself. Do not overstep your bounds to intervene. My child should be the bravest and most powerful little phoenix." Master Fuguang remained silent for a long time, then gently nodded. "So, my parents were not born as harbingers of doom, but were driven to a dead end by the heavenly emperor. So Master Fuguang had always been protecting me, not because of Qingyao's entrustment, but because of his promise to my parents. So the heavenly emperor's talk of putting the common people first was merely an excuse to eliminate those who opposed him and consolidate his own power." Awakened from the long dream, I lay in the bamboo house on Wuyu Cliff, with a man in dark green robes sitting by my side, with eyes as black as ink. He was none other than the Azure Phoenix god Qihua. Seeing me wake up, he reached out to help me, his voice gentle. "Tanxi, you're awake." He claimed to be my husband, staying by my side every day, caring for me with the utmost devotion. But as I looked at him, I felt only a stranger. "Those phoenixes are not good people. Only I am truly sincere to you. Why not just keep going like this? Forget everything, wouldn't that be better?" I feigned memory loss to play along with his charade, all the while knowing clearly that he merely wanted to use me to stop me from taking revenge. He had peeked into my dreams when I was still in the egg, discovering my true lineage. He feared that my revenge would implicate the Phoenix clan, and feared that I would destroy the 3 realms, destroying everything he had worked so hard to obtain. But the peaceful days did not last long after all. The serenity of Wuyu Cliff was shattered by 2 men. An immortal in white robes stepped onto the clouds and descended, refined and graceful, peerlessly noble. He was none other than Manhwa. The moment he saw me, a storm of emotions stirred in his pale eyes, as if we were meeting across lifetimes. A man in black followed closely behind, with his dark hair tied high. It was indeed Yan Shao. He stormed through the door, and the moment he saw me, the hostility in his eyes vanished, replaced only by regret and longing. I shrank behind Qihua, feigning fear. "Husband, they're so scary. Husband, handsome, have you no shame?" The 3 of them instantly clashed into a brawl, with thunder and fire raging, and ice and lightning flying. The entire forget-me-not cliff was shaken until it seemed it might collapse. I sat on the steps in front of the bamboo cottage, cracking melon seeds, watching them all suffer injuries. The ground was a mess. Once I finished the seeds, the 3 of them stopped fighting, staring at me with burning intensity. They spoke in unison. "I am your husband. I lost my memory, and only remember that I have a husband. Tanxi, when you woke up, it was I who was by your side taking care of you. He kidnapped you." Manhwa ignored them, gazing fixedly at me, his voice low and heavy. "I am your Shu. I've remembered everything now. I remember everything about the Kanglang Sea. I remember the suffering you endured for me, and I remember you being." He couldn't continue, his eyes filled with guilt. Yan Shao seized the opportunity. "He is just a good-for-nothing. Believe me, I'm your modeled Qilin. He is merely your substitute. You're the one who is a substitute. He never liked you." These 2 were seasoned liars, full of nonsense. I scoffed out loud, and raised my eyes to look at Qihua, with not a shred of pretense left in my gaze. "Qingluan, speaking of being biased, aren't you just the same? You never lost your memory." "That is right. How could it be that easy to lose one's memory? You had the ability to glimpse into dreams even while in the egg. How could you not know what happened in my dreams? You said you wanted to protect me. In reality, you just wanted me to escape, to make me forget the grudge against my parents, forget the schemes of heaven and earth. You are the proud Lord Qingluan. Yet you made me lower my head before my deep blood feud. Don't you think that is ridiculous?" Yu's face turned ashen. He said nothing. I turned to look at Yan Shao. My tone was cold. "You told your father you were forced to marry me. But in truth, you wanted to use the snow veins of this cursed daughter to defy heaven and earth and seize the three realms. In your eyes, I was nothing more than a tool, a stepping stone for the Qihua clan to rise in power. That is not true. If I had wanted to use you, I wouldn't have spoken so harshly on Mount Tanxi, nor would I have avoided you for a century on Mount Jianchun. I was just dealing with my father. My feelings for you are real. It doesn't matter anymore. I've said it 100 times. You are merely a substitute for a shoe. Don't you understand? I'm too tired to say anything more. I have nothing left to say to you. Finally, I look toward Manhwa. The person I have loved for a century and pined for a century now leaves me feeling nothing but indifference. I really have remembered everything. Tanxi, give me one more chance. Manhwa's figure trembled slightly. His pale pupils were surging with turbulent waves. I lifted my eyes to the sky, refusing to look at him. The black dots on the horizon grew larger and larger, until they became an overwhelming swarm of heavenly soldiers and generals, lining up above the cliff of forgotten sorrows. The celestial emperor stood upon an auspicious cloud in the center, clad in his dragon robes, with immense majesty. It looks exactly as it did in my dreams. We meet again, Tanxi. The heavenly emperor's voice drifted through the ranks of the celestial army to my ears, laden with condescending arrogance. Your Majesty, long time, no see. You should know whose child I am. Ignoring my sarcasm, he looked toward Manhwa. Manhwa, return to your post immediately. Do not aid a tyrant in their evil deeds. Manhwa stood before me, looking at me with stubborn resolve. I will not go. You are hopelessly obstinate. The heavenly emperor roared, then looked at Yan Xiao and Chen Yu, young master of the Qihua, godly lord of the Qingluan. If you know what is good for you, step aside. I can spare your lives. Yan Xiao drew his fenching sword, blocking my path. If you want to touch her, you'll have to get through me first. I am protecting her today. Chen Yu also summoned his magic artifact, his face set in determination. The three of them stood side by side before me, facing off against 1,000,000 celestial soldiers. As I watched their backs, my heart was filled with a complex mix of emotions. But with such a deep-seated grievance before me, sentimental matters were no longer worth mentioning. I stepped forward. Your Majesty, I am not here today to fight you for the three realms. I am here for revenge. Ha ha ha, revenge. Your parents were the stars of calamity, bringing chaos to the three realms. They deserve to die. As the daughter of those traitors, you dare speak of revenge. Submit to justice at once. I may spare your life. Submit to justice. What justice? Is it the heavenly way you speak of, or your own hypocritical path as the heavenly emperor? If the heavenly way were truly just, how could you label my innocent mother a calamity? If you were a benevolent ruler, how could you have forced my father into that tragedy, leading to such a disaster? Heavenly emperor, you speak incessantly of the common good, but you are merely clinging to your own power. You envied my parents for how well they governed the Phoenix clan, and you feared my father's strength, so you used the name of heaven's will as a pretext. You are the greatest sinner in the three realms. Silence your insolence. The will of heaven is clear, and it has nothing to do with me. Heaven's will. I sneer coldly. I raise my hand and tear the skin from the back of my neck with all my strength. There lies the emblem left behind by my mother. I channel my inner essence. The Empress's emblem is here. Could this possibly be fake? The emblem transforms into golden light, floating into the air. It unfolds across the sky into vivid, moving scenes. The scenes show the past between the heavenly emperor and my parents, her jealousy toward the Phoenix clan, her fear of my father, her conspiracy with the master of heavenly secrets, and the truth of how she forced my parents to their deaths. Every single detail is crystal clear. The immortals watch it all, shocked and stunned. Manhwa gazes at the images in the sky. Father, is this true? It is all fabricated nonsense. Celestial soldiers heed my command. Exterminate the traitor. Show no mercy. 1,000,000 celestial soldiers move at once, charging toward us. Manhwa, Yan Xiao, and Chen Yu all conjure their weapons, stepping in front of me to clash with the celestial army. But there are too many soldiers, and the three of them are gradually losing ground. Each of them bears new wounds. I raise my hand, firing 3 arrows of pure phoenix feathers into their shoulders. The arrows, charged with powerful magic, pin them against the cliff face over 100 yards away. They struggle to break free, but they couldn't pull the arrows out at all. I blinked at them. Don't waste your energy. These are the 3,000 worries forged for me by my master. They grow stronger with my magic. Now that I have awakened my phoenix bloodline, there is no way you can break free from these blades. I turned to face the heavenly soldiers and generals, and tore the void bag apart. Countless feathered arrows flew out from the bag, spreading across the sky, thick and dense, blotting out the sun. The arrows seemed to have a life of their own, turning their tips and shooting toward the heavenly soldiers and generals. Most of the soldiers were pinned to the ground by a single arrow, unable to move or pull them out, left only to wail in agony. The remaining more powerful gods were also forced to fight against the arrows, plunging the scene into total chaos. As I looked at the arrows filling the sky, my heart filled with gratitude for Master Fuguang. These 3,000 worries truly are the most formidable weapons in the three realms. They managed to burden every single heavenly soldier with worries all at once. The heavenly emperor's face was dark as soot. On the screen above, the footage left behind by my mother was still playing, showing how she entrusted her requests to Master Fuguang and how to avoid the humiliation of the heavenly emperor. She chose to end her own life. Looking at my mother on the screen, my heart ached with bitterness, strengthening my resolve to seek revenge. It was then that I realized that the oath was actually a two-way street. The vow I once made, that I would face heaven's thunder if I abandoned the dragon egg, meant that if Qihua abandoned me, he would also suffer the punishment of heavenly thunder. At the edge of the endless abyss, he chose to save the common people and abandon me. At that moment, the nine heavens' thunder had already struck him. His mother, Qihua's biological mother, was the very woman in the heavenly palace who told me to take the dragon egg. She used her own life to leave me the leverage for my revenge, and for Qihua, she left behind a shackle. I looked at Qihua pinned to the cliff face and said calmly, "Brother Qihua, your mother had more spine than you." Yan Xiao's shoulder was bleeding, yet he let out a loud laugh. The sound of senior sister Yingshe's zither suddenly drifted over, stabbing a sharp pain into my heart. I decisively drew an arrow and drove it into his chest. I laid him on the ground and walked up to him. "You watched me chase after Qihua bitterly. You watched me be rejected by three godlords. You watched me become the laughingstock of the three realms. You never took me seriously, did you? Because I posed no threat to you or to the heavenly emperor, you could remain indifferent. Those who follow different paths cannot plan together. I have my own path. No need to ask further." I brushed aside the dull ache in my heart and turned back to look at Qihua. "You aren't even as good as your aunt." Qihua remained silent, his eyes filled with guilt and pain. A mere fledgling phoenix who just awakened her snow veins dares to be arrogant in front of me. The heavenly emperor, having lost all patience, attacked me himself. I raised my hand to summon my feather sword, only to find my pouch was already empty. The 3,000 worries were spent. Just as the heavenly emperor's sword was about to pierce my chest, a clear piercing crane cry echoed from the clouds. 10,000 rays of sunlight poured down, carrying a man in plain clothes on its back, with silver hair and a jade hairpin, his features peerless. It was Master Fuguang. He had shed his youthful appearance and regained his true form as a high god. "Master," I cried out, my eyes stinging with tears. He was the one who protected me as I left 10,000 years ago, the one who silently guarded me for thousands of years, the one who taught me to cultivate, and the one who forged my weapons. He was never just the old friend Qingyao described. He was my parents' junior brother, the one who promised my mother he would protect me for a lifetime. The crane flew overhead. Master Fuguang dropped the sword. The blade was bright white, a flowing luster, ringing sharply. It was the Taishang Wangqing sword, the very blade my mother had forged herself 10,000 years ago. I caught the sword firmly. The moment I gripped the hilt, it felt as if my mother's power surged into my body, warm and unyielding. "Fuguang, how dare you protect the offspring of the phoenix? Do you know this is an act of treason? I am merely giving my beloved disciple a sword for revenge." No one could have imagined that the detached god Fuguang would take the daughter of the phoenix as his disciple and openly stand against the heavenly emperor. Sister Yingshe looked at Master Fuguang, her eyes filled with shock. Clearly, she had no idea that I was Fuguang's disciple or the daughter of the Phoenix Empress. I gripped the Taishang Wangqing sword tightly. "Heavenly Emperor, today, I will use my mother's sword to send you to your grave." How arrogant. Swords flashed and clashed, blade auras crisscrossing, the sword in my hand, carrying the techniques my master taught me, the experiences I gathered walking the mortal realm, the longing for my parents, and the hatred for the heavenly emperor. Struck with every movement, every strike was aimed to kill. The heavenly emperor clearly hadn't expected my swordplay to be so fierce. "Tanxi, do you know why your parents could not be reborn from the flames? Once the phoenix blood is drained, the chance for rebirth is lost. They will never enter the cycle of reincarnation. Your parents' tears had all run dry, dying so miserably, yet so beautifully." My hand holding the sword trembled. My eyes turned bloodshot. A sinister aura began to emerge from my body. The images of my parents appeared in my mind. They were surrounded by the heavenly army and murdered by the heavenly emperor. So miserable, so helpless. A voice filled with immense pressure arrived. "Ah, The sinister aura on my body gradually faded. The crimson in my eyes slowly dissipated. His voice was cold and stern, yet strangely it calmed my heart. The heavenly emperor continued to babble on the side. Tan Xuan and Zhang Yi protected their people, but the people betrayed them. I erased their memories. To live in guilt forever. Isn't this the most beautiful thing? This trick won't work anymore. If my father could change his fate, why can't I? You want to force me? Want me to become a new calamity? I refuse to give you what you want. The heavenly emperor paused slightly. A trace of astonishment flashed in his eyes. It was this momentary lapse that became his fatal wound. I pushed off with my toes, rising with the wind. The supreme forgetfulness sword hummed incessantly. Even if I am a star of calamity, I will only be a calamity to you alone. The tip of my sword moved faster than the wind, piercing ruthlessly into the heavenly emperor's chest. I looked at him. The heavenly emperor's eyes were filled with disbelief. He looked down at the sword in his chest, his body gradually turning transparent. Golden light spilled out from his body, shattering like crystal, scattering into starlight across the sky. His soul was utterly destroyed. The ruler of the three realms, a generation's heavenly emperor, finally fell by my sword, fell at the hands of the daughter he himself had doomed. My great vengeance was finally served. I stood upon the clouds, watching the sky filled with